So now we're recording on page Nun, and we're going to start with, I think we're doing just a light print here now, in the Tev. So he says, Ke'es mevar harav ketzad anu muchunim halacha l'maisa b'tefillah. So how do we put this action, we know what action we're talking about here, but the word Hashem, how is actually we fit it in and we prepare it to go into the davening, how you match it up. As milas Hashem shall Vayaavor. Let me read it again. So Ke'es mevar harav ketzad anu muchunim halacha l'maisa b'tefillah as milas Hashem shall Yavor. So in the phrase Yavor Hashem al pana v'yikra, and then he starts going down Hashem kel rachum. What's that first Hashem? What happens? It's a magic word. So he says, well, what does it do? So he says, Umakni marav tehindera yudura shepartza zer anpin yesh bo rach tesha spheros. Zer anpin only has 9 spheros. V'haseifa v'hasphira hasiris. So wait a minute, I thought he had 10 spheros. He says, well, what happens is the 10th spheros. Shemash limasu lihiyos l'sabes spheros. He anukva. That's his female attribute. Shehi hamalchus. Another word for that. That's malchus. So v'rach behiyosech be'imo. So now only the fact that she's with him, that is with their anpin. So if you count her in with their anpin, you made a sabes spheros. That's how you get to 10. But if she's going to be independent, then he's only going to be a 9. So besides her, there's only 9 spheros. So, no. So he says, now you're going to say the Avor. Now we said that Avor goes also, not to keep out of my mind, but I'm constantly thinking about understanding this Yichud, Yaakov and Rachel. Vayaavor, anu, not Yaakov and Rachel, it's Yisroel, and they call it Yichud Zun, Yisroel and Leah. Boy, I got that mixed up. So what's happened here now is that we're after davening. And in Sim Shalom, which with God's help we'll get to understand all of the Amida, but at any point, at Sim Shalom, a Yichud takes place. The Yichud can only take place after the Nesira, that is, after the female aspect becomes completely independent, and he's going to explain. After Nesira shall Anufa Sheha Malchus, Mizer Anpin, she separates from Zer Anpin and becomes independent. Shaharika b'techilas tefilas Shmona Esrei, because at the beginning of the Shmona Esrei, parts of Zer Anpin and Anukva amdu mehubarim bekatnusim ach ba'ach. So this is important to know that as you start the idea that goes on, that permeates the Shmona Esrei, is the Yichud of Zachar v'Nuk, of Yaakov and Rachel, or Zer Anpin and Malchus. So that concept there is really what starts, and it starts out, and I'll read it again. He says, parts of the Zer Anpin v'Hanukva amdu mechubarim bekatnusim, they were stuck together in a state of katnus, without the mochim that come in that we've been talking about all this time from Ema. So bekatnusim achur ach ba'ach, so they're back to back. Ach ba'ach, yeah. So achur ba'achur, yeah. So this was a point of contention, as I said. Rabbi Mograbi held, and I also learned with this Rabbi Yaakov Cronenberg, the astrologer. They pronounce all the abbreviations. They abbreviate everything they can. But it's another aspect of Helen. But also they cover over the din. So the kind of ach, what they call, instead of achor, they say ach ba'ach, like that.
Okay.
So I'm gonna finish out this thing because I had this morning also. So first of all, we're reading a big time rabbi over here. This guy's obviously, really deep. He wrote it achor ba'achor. So since Rabbi Mograbi held like that, and then I saw Yaakov Cronenberg held like that, so then I started pronouncing it that way. I like the sound of it anyway. So, but then Rabbi Mimram came along and he said, don't do that. Okay? So I just found out there's different schools. These guys, it's not just one thing. It's different, we're making our own music. So at any rate, we borrow from all of them. So I kind of like to say, but God knows, ach ba'ach, it just sounds good to me. That's, I hear different things. I repeat them. That's all. I'm just telling you the background on this. At first, I thought everything had to be the way Rabbi Mogrib said it. Then I found out he doesn't pronounce like everybody else, even though he's, he's close to the Baba Sali, my gosh, and all of this stuff. But nonetheless, he has a different style. They're different. So we have to be, what we are. Okay, anyway, so that's what I'm doing, and I'll fool around with it. I have to, for me to start saying achor ba'achor, I have to think about it. Maybe I'll try. You'll see what it sounds like. But here's what he wants to say. He wants to say that at the beginning, Zer Anpin and the Nukva are not sweetened in any way, and the middle line is not in the action. So therefore, they're back to back. And they're back to back because Zer Anpin does not have the Mocha the godless, and he doesn't have what to give to her. So therefore, they're opposites. If you listen to the shir this morning, it was to go really deeply into this, is that, and I said there, I'll repeat it again. He said, I used to learn a little bit from a lady who was a fortune teller. And, there's a drunken fortune teller out in the woods out there. But at any rate, she used to take cards and she would predict the future out of the cards. It was like a sort of a state. And then she would, if you had like, say, two queens, or I don't know what we call it back to back. In other words, because they're facing, if you ever look at cards, the picture cards are facing one direction or the other. She called that back to back, and she would say something like this. This is an indication that there's trouble over here. Because back to back means that you're not getting along. You're looking your way, she's looking her way, that's it. The middle line, that's the state that they're in right now, is without a middle line. So b'katnusam, that's called katnus. They're in the state of ach ba'ach. V'achakach b'tebes ba'ava, then you come to the word ba'ava, which is part of the Shemona Esrei. Hoyach ha-nesira, then it's a nesira that takes place. Now this nesira, I just realized, I was looking at your chart the other day, and you told me you were born on Rosh Hashanah. And you're like a double Libra. So you have a Libra sun, and you also have a Libra rising. And for people who interpret charts, which I only just try to learn from them, they need to know, your rising sign, because it controls. They think that it controls your destiny, where you're trying to go or where you're coming from, something like that. To figure it out. At any rate, you have this double Libra, so it's really in your chart, this kind of learning that we're doing here. Anyway, we can talk about it another time because I try to understand charts. So then you get to the word ba'ava. And this is the reason why I said this. Because the nesira that takes place every day is the same kind of nesira that takes place at Rosh Hashanah. But in Rosh Hashanah, and when Elul comes, in Mitzvah Hashem, I'll be back, we should really look at Rosh Hashanah, the Kavanas of Rosh Hashanah more closely, because it's really your time. So we have to see what it is. Libra is a concept of balance. Balance. So you're like a double balance. I think that balance also makes you a leader too, because you're looking for balance. Always looking to get things balanced. So, Libra is a great social sign. Great social sign. Those are things I know for sure. My son-in-law is a Libra. I see what he's like in company. He's just great. Great. Anyway, going on. So after that, here we say like this. You're in the Shemona Esrei, and you went through the Nesira in Sim Shalom. Haisa Nesira Shal Nukva Mechazah. During that period of time, the Nukva is no longer coupled to Zah back to back. She has grown up to a full height, come around to the front of him, and they're actually in a position of Yichud. And they're Miyached, they make Yichud. So we're after that time. So the Nakuda of, in other words, what used to be the aspect of him, which was his backside, which is her, is now in his front. V'gam Nakuda upon him shalah. So the back and the front, that means her whole self comes to him. So here he's telling us that there is such a thing in a parts of as the front and the back of it. It's very important, actually. And so her front, I don't know, I guess why he broke it up, but he said her front and her back are both come around to his front. Begam the kudus upon him shalah, godly growth. B'tevis melech ozer Mashiach mogain. I should be keep reading and stop talking. So he says, melech ozer Mashiach mogain causes the rest to fall in place. That is, all of her, she builds up, her side comes to complete height. U'v'tevis birchas mogain Avraham, and when you go to the bracha Avraham, nazech v'kibuch hayamim ayidei zruah yamim shalazah ayidei shem av. And when you get to that point right there, then you have a yichud that takes place, not a yichud, a hugging that takes place with the right on of Zera Anpin, ayidei shem av, using the name Av. Now that has been talked about previously, maybe not in this section, I don't know. So now when you come to the end of the bracha, now you're at Mechai Mesim. So, I
thought that was the first order that initially.
Me too.
Yeah, small rather than me.
But we have to assume, because he's going to talk about it again, and we have to assume that the first yichud is with the right hand and the next one is in the left. And the chisaron is that I haven't taken the time to really look in the Rishash to see, because it says over there. You have to look for it, but it's over there. It's part of the sequence. So part of the sequence is that when you get to Magen Avraham, then you're really promoting a certain kind of a situation, and there are higher level zivugim taking place. So his anasa b'chibuch hasmole b'smol hazah. So at that point right there at B'chai Mesim, you have this yichud of the left hand. So when you get to Ha'el HaKadosh, you got to the Chibuk Emsoy. So I guess, so his Avim came, a matzav ke'esa, where are we at right now? Vayaavor Shahamalchus Adayim Nefredis Minizah, that Malchus at this time is completely separated from Zer Anpin. V'hi rak b'matz machshav panim b'panim mimo, she's only face to face, and she's not there in the back anymore. V'im kev yesh ke'es l'zah rak teishes spheres bilvad. So therefore you can't count her as a part of Zer Anpin anymore. She's a big girl, and she grew up and she moved out. So he said, now let's go back to the tipa that we were talking about before. So this we came down, and we have a representation of it as part of the tselem, which is the covering, which is based on the chokhmah of the tzaddik, the lamed mem of chokhmah, of the moach of chokhmah. So he says it's something really, really high like that, but even behind that, it's coming from way, way up. As we went through this a couple of times already. Ad sofa yisod shel ima. So this is nemshach ad to the bottom of the yisod of ima. Shesham hu hapeh v'hakotze shel yisod shel ima, which is the mouth. And there's the end of where ima's reaches. Kamosha causes the ale. So we said that before. There's going to be a stop up here. Makom zeh nimsa b'chazer shel zer anpin. So this is one of my confusions. He says that this place that we're talking about right here is at the chest of Zer Anpin. V'sham anim ma'akvim mesaor, so we hold back the light at that place. V'hu bokeh mechitzas ima, and it breaks through the walls of ima. V'yotze el bein shnei zroas hazah, then it breaks through the two arms. V'yotze, and it goes out to, in the direction of the two arms of Zer Anpin. Shenim sayim b'makom b'chazer, which is basically the chest is where your arms are. Okay, so in other words, it broke open, and now they're out there heading towards the arms. Says K'etz, now what happens now? Most even b'chadash Rav, the Rav comes in, he adds on this. The ha'or hazeh hu nimshak gam came derek achrei hazah. So this light that we're talking about is also spreading over to the backside of Zer Anpin. Now this is the light of the tipa. The tipa broke open the walls, and then everybody starts to scatter right and left. But he says that he wants to let you know this idea. Go to the word the ha'or hazeh hu nimshak gam kem derek achrei hazah. That's the light of the tipa. It's also in the back of Zer Anpin. So that's where the nukva used to be. The nukva used to be there, but now she's in the front of Zer Anpin. Shehi HaMalchus HaDevuka B'Zer Anpin Ach Ba'ach. That's the old Malchus that was clinging to him, Ach Ba'ach. The Sulam used to say, Ein Heder Baruchnis. That was a phrase he used a lot. And I had a long time to try to find out this word heder, what it meant. It means lack. So nothing is ever missing in Ruchnius. Once it was there, that's the idea he's talking about here. Umakdim barav od klal yudua. So now he says something else we have to know. Shekol davar shebegedusha, everything that has to do with kedusha. Avidah shegavar nistalik me'osach hamakom, even like in this case, where it leaves the place where it originally was. Adayim munach umeir b'makom hasham, still is placed there and shines in its place there. Shor shadavar hakodesh ahu, the root of this holy item, this holy entity, which was the Malchus. So he says what? It is the light that goes onto the back to where Malchus used to be, and he's telling us that Malchus is Kadosh. So even though she was in a case of Katna, she's not Katna anymore. She's over a big girl, and she's now up in front of Zer Anpin, and they're heading towards the chuppah. And what's in the back? Nothing. But he says there's a Rishimo that's still there. So therefore, even the nukva, and here he writes the word nukva instead of nekeva. Shehi HaMalchus is which is Malchus. So since, besides the fact that she's already been removed from her place, she's not there anymore, and she separated and she left Zer Anpin behind, but the root of herself, of her essence, is still there. In the original place in which she was still there. That's that little piece of Ruchnius, not a little piece. He says it's the root of the Ruchnius is still there. So therefore, by adding in this light that we are bringing down from up above, because now the light that we brought down, I guess he means the tipa, and he says that the tipa actually went into Zer Anpin all around him, in his front and his back. And he says, so let's read on a little bit more. So he says, after Shorsha, let me read this. In the back, right before Pei Zayin, it says, Meir Ata Shorsho Ma'od. So in other words, her root is still there, and the whole light of the tipa is also coming there. So now she has a tremendous amount of light in that place. Now, so what does it get you? Let's go on. Pei Zayin, va'al yedeha or hazeh yachad im shorish hanukva. So this light now, together with the root of the nukva was originally there, nishlam hazam etesha spheros le'eser spheros. So this therefore becomes Zer Anpin's 10th spheros. The sphere. The Malchus itself is actually around the front of Zer Anpin, the original Malchus, his mate. And now what's left behind is his 10th spheros, which is built out of the Rishimo that was left over, and the light of the Tipa that comes and meets it. V'nikra al yedei kain shem male. So as a result of this, Zer Anpin therefore is called the full name. V'chavaya shlema v'gemura. So therefore he has his own hay. In other words, he developed, as we said, the chavaya shlema. Zer Anpin, you could easily say, is a Yud Kei Vav, which is a gematria tal in a certain kind of way. So you could see that what his top part is. But if he doesn't have a bottom, he's nothing. So therefore he has to have a malchus. So therefore this becomes his malchus. V'zeh hakavana she'anim muchanim v'muchunim b'shem avayach hazeh shel Vayaavor. So this is the kavana that we have to have in this mind, in the name. When you say Vayaavor and then you say the name Hashem, what you're allowing for, but this is really way out of my thought process. What you're saying when you say Vayaavor, you're causing the light that is in the back of the light of the tipa in the back of Zer Anpin to wed in some way with the Rishimo of the original Nukva, which is now in the front of Zer Anpin, and produce a new Malchus. That's the way I hear it.
How do you do the mispar of Yud Kei Vav being Tau? I count that as 21, and Tal is...
No, you have to put a Yud Vav Dalet, K Aleph, Vav Aleph Vav. Try that one.
The Miloi, okay.
Yeah, it's in a milui.
Okay.
I'm just saying I just throw these things out because someday, with God's help, we should have health and continue on little by little, and little by little we'll see all of that in its place. But this to me is a very deep place that we're at right now. So anyway, let's dive in a little bit more. So now we got the number Peches. Let me get a drink here. Just wet my whistle.
Okay.
Peches. We're reading at the top now. He says, Hinein is boyer la'el. Oh, excuse me, let me read the brackets. Bir tevis al panav. So now we got to the concept of Hashem. That idea is that you're going to make this combination of these two, of the Rishimo and the light from up above, and produce a new final letter Hey. And now you have the complete name there. That's the concept. Vayaavor is for the purpose of that yichud with Yisrael and Leah. And then you say Hashem, that's for the purposes of making Zer Anpin complete. And now we're somewhere else. We're going to the next word. Panav, al panav. I really had a hard time placing this idea. So let's see what he says. Hine nisboyer la'el is explained up above. Shekol inyan hamshachas or hatipa haniskar. So the entire inyan of the hamshacha of the light of the tipa, who the inyan chibuk malchus, has something to do with the chibuk that takes place with malchus. Haramuza b'pasuk shalom alam is that, which is referenced in the pasuk that's above this. Ba'omro ani a'avir kol tuvi. So that's part. In other words, where it starts Hashem kel rachum v'chanim. This is the pasuk that came before that. Shuhi hamalchus and nikra Leah. So here we're talking about this malchus, and this malchus that we're talking about here is Leah. Now, I like to read it again up to this point, because the deal with Leah is really, really important. So he said, he named this boyer Leah should call in hamshachas or hatipa hanizkar. So we're bringing down the light of this tipa. What's the ultimate idea? Is to bring it into this world. Who the inyan chibuk hamalchus has something to do with the hugging of malchus. Haramuza b'pasuk shalom alam is that, which comes before this pasuk. Let me see if it's an easy one. Okay, ba'omro ani avir al kol tovi. So he says, and I will cause to pass by all of my goodness, which is what is all my goodness? Shira malchus and nikras Leah. That's the malchus that's called Leah. Okay, so all of this is totally new to me. So then he says, Vihine, hamalchus azos hi ata al panav mu'ulam imenu. So now this malchus, he says, is now on his face, which I assume he means face to face. I don't know. Ma'ula memenu, but she's up above him. The fish are called bechinas horedis tipazu, because the whole what he said, the bechina, all aspects of the bringing down of this tipa, hoisa the hored the malchus was to bring it to malchus. El the sharanachlo ikva oso b'makom hazeh kenizka the ale, but we held it back. Remember, we held it back, and so therefore it didn't make it to malchus. So I'm trying to get the sequence. This is a big, big sequence. He said, "Kedei lahashlim za atzmam kanayda." So the idea is that his build-up is, I guess, the build-up is malchus, and Zad will be complete. Nimsa shu ochel mishallah, and it comes out that he's actually eating from what belongs to her. Umechelko hanogei law, and he also, let's use the word feeds, or yeah. And also her proportion, which is that proportion which is really pertinent to her in particular. So he's therefore, in this way, he's subservient to her. And she's bigger than him, or she's more important than him. L'me'ira b'fanecha Yosef b'menu. And she shines, u'me'ira b'fanecha, and she shines on her face, or Yosef b'menu, more than him. She's brighter than he is. Now, none of this is all new to me. So I hope that you're going to catch me. V'zeh nirmaz b'milas al panav, and this is referenced by the phrase al panav. Shelo ne'ema b'panav. It doesn't say on his face. It says above his face. Everyone wants to say al panav, up above his face. Ella al panav, up above his face. Kolomer l'mala mepanav, that is, she's up above his face. Ki Leah zu hi ma'ula alav u'me'ira b'yosef, that she is on a higher level than he, and she shines more. Now, so...
I thought by definition, Malkuth has no light of her own. It's only reflective. I mean, how could her aura be greater than his? Yosef, I mean, I don't understand it. I'm not following it at all. And why, after she leaves and she's going to the front of Zerah, and then she's bringing the essence of her tipa into the Zara, that she, I'm not following. Why would she be higher than him?
Okay, so here's what it is. The anatomy here. We're talking about Zeranpin has two wives, not one.
Yeah.
So the one that we know about, which is the one that you're talking about, that's Rachel, called Rachel. So Rachel and Yaakov are mates. Okay, she is the Iker, that's her son Yosef, all the thing that she represented, which is really a tremendous amount of shmiras habris and sweetness and trying to be sweet, are reflected in him. Now, Leah is another story. So therefore Leah, so where is Rachel? Rachel's from the Chawzeh Leah Mata. She's from the chest downwards of Zeranpin. That's where her partsuf is. And the partsuf of Leah is from the chest upwards to the level of Bina. And I think if you remember that I showed you in the Rishash Siddur how there are 4 Leahs there. Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov. And then it says Hakel, which is the word Leah herself. That's her name. So there you're building up Leah. Now, so I'm telling you that I don't understand it either, but that part I do understand. Okay, I'll tell you what I do understand. So now he's coming over, and look, this Leah is not we just spent all the time, all this deep learning about how we haven't done it here, but I mean the deep learning is how, in the Shmona Esrei, how the Nesira takes place. The Nesira is not taking place in Leah, it's taking place with Rachel. That Rachel grows up to the whole height of Zeranpin, which means that she takes over the space of Leah. So somehow she absorbs herself in Leah. She's built up, and how does this happen? Actually, happens. That's the Rosh Hashanah story. That's your story. It is that how Ima comes in and actually builds Rachel up to a point where she's equal to Zeranpin, because that's the only way that they can mate. He can't mate if he has Mochin the godless and she has Mochin the godless. No good. So therefore, you have to bring the Mochin the godless that's inside of him. You bring it into her, and she grows up. She's strong enough. And Rosh Hashanah and the 10 days of Seres Tshuva, you start counting the 10 spheres of Rachel as she is separating herself from Zeranpin, and then you start moving into Yom Kippur. All of this I don't remember, but that's part of it. So this is what you're talking. This is the sequence that we normally deal with. But over here, we're going to start talking about a yichud that we don't normally deal with. The only thing I know about it from learning the Zohar is that it's a yichud that normally takes place after midnight. Okay, because during the night hours, Rachel, there's probably a machloktim about him. Maybe we'll be zeicha to learn this better too. Goes into Bia. She goes down into the lower worlds. When we go to sleep, it's the Rachel Dika aspect of us goes into the lower worlds to try to resurrect the nitzutzas of Kedusha that are there. So, therefore, there's nothing in the back of Yaakov or Zeranpin. So Leah comes and fills that space. So here we're talking, that's the only thing I know. Now over here he's saying, now let's look at our pairs. And our pairs is that Leah actually begins, her Rosh is opposite Bina. So therefore, and in the Otras Chaim is a beautiful piece, the Tiv is a beautiful piece over there where it explains where Leah comes from. And Leah has really always been an aspect of Bina, but fallen, like a fallen aspect, at a low level, who rises back up during our prayers to the level of Bina again. So that's all I know. I said, I don't know anything else about it, except that she's there, and that, other places, they say, for example, her feet are inside the head of Rachel, meaning that there's a connection between the bottom of Leah and Rachel. Exactly what that means, I don't know either. But here, this is our introduction, let's say, so to speak. So let's hear, we're working on the Tevis Alpanov. We're on number Peches, which is the left column on page Nun Beis. That's where we're going to start. Hine kosav Rab Le'el shetam hamshachas or hatipa. Why is the matzil bringing this tipa down? Hu b'shvil shetzarak la'asos chibuk yoser me'ula min harisha. Okay, this is the actual language. He says the reason why we need the tipa is because we need a higher level of chibuk. Now, chibuk is a preliminary to yichud. So, we need a higher level of chibuk. Shehu chibuk hamalchus, shehi nukva dezer anpen, shehi leah. So, what is this higher level of chibuk? Well, this higher level of chibuk has to do with Leah. She is an aspect of Malchus, right? She's the upper part of Malchus. Shehi chibuk hamalchus, shehi nukve dezer anpen, shehi Leah. She is the wife of Zer Anpin, and her name is Leah. And why are we doing this? To make after this, as a zivavu kumosha kosav rab bereish hadrash. Avur hazivug shia asike ace shehi yisra v'leah Vayaavor. Now I want to read this section again one more time for myself, and hope that it'll come clearer. Starting with Hine kosav Rav Le'el shetam hamshachas or chatipa, hu b'shvil shetzarak la'asos chibuk yoser me'ula. So this is a whole idea min harisha. So this phrase, chibuk yoser me'ula min harisha. So he's going to go back and he's going to say in the Shmona Esrei, you made another kind of chibuk. And you and I are going to be confused because he's going to say the right and the left. He's going to get me mixed up. But at any rate, that's what he's going to do. He says, so anyway, we're going to try to make a higher level of chibuk. What does a higher mean? Shehu chibuk ha-malchus, this is a chibuk with malchus. Who this malchus is? Shehi nukvid is their anpin, shehi Leah. So since we understand that Leah is in a level of Bina, and Zer Anpin is being fed by Bina, in other words, he's at a lower dimension. So he says, this gives you the idea of the highness. That's best I can think. Trying to decipher these words, that's what I'm saying, trying to decipher the words. So, and the reason why you need to make this higher level yichud is because you want to get that in the phrase Vayaavor, you're going to get to a yichud, an actual zivug. V'hu kamosha kosav Rav bereish hadrash avor. So where we say avor, he says zivug shia asa ke'es. That refers to the yichud. When you say bavor, he says shuhu Yisrael v'leah beVayaavor. So he says, so that's going to happen when you get to Vayaavor. And now we have to define, I think what he's doing, and thinking about it, is he's trying to define where everybody is. Uke'ez mevi harab remez dekach. So now I want to bring a hint to this. Meloshen apasuk shene'ema kodem apasuk shel Vayaavor. So let's try to understand, we'll get a hint of where we're really at from the pasuk that comes before Yavor. And that verse says, Ani avir kol tuvi lifanecha. I will cause to pass, call of my goodness before your panecha, your face. Haremez who? Bemilas ani. So let's look back at it again. He says ani, right? So he says ani avir. All of this tuvi the Fanecha. And he says that the remez here comes from the word ani. The kavana the malchus. The ani is who? It's malchus. Kamoshi be'arna b'shefa kavanas. He can explain it more down there. But malchus he Leah. Who's malchus? What malchus we talk about is Leah. So he wants to say that this whole thing, that is the Vayaavor Hashem al pana v'yikra, all of that phrase right there, well, at least until the word v'yikra, is going to refer to Leah. So let's go on a little bit more. So he says, so now he says, Ke'ez now, Mivara Rav as Hemshek Pasuk. Rav wants to come and continue out the Pasuk. Shall Yavor Hashem al panav, that Hashem will pass over his face. That's Hashem, V'yavor Hashem al panav. So once again, we got the idea of Yavor. We just said what it was. We had the idea of Hashem, which is complete, Zer Anpin, into 10 spheros. And now we're working on the phrase al panav. The kashem mahu lashon al panav. So it's a question. So why use that phrase al panav? The hoyet sarach loma b'panav, on his face. Why al panav? Al panav really means on his face. But the emphasis is on which word? So is on his face with a base like b'panav, really the emphasis here is on the face. But al panav means up above his face, really. So he said, the Baal Nermos Shal Malchus Shehi Leah. This has come to tell you, in this situation, the Malchus, which is Leah, Ma'ula, she's in a higher level, Ke'ez now. Mimena Vizer Anpin Shehu Yisrael, she's in a higher level. V'habir Lakach, and the explanation for this, Hu Mishum Shehatam Ha'ikri, is because the really basic, most fundamental reason, Shel Horedis Atipa Huzu, for bringing down this tipa, he b'shvil ha-malchus, is for the sake of malchus. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to build up malchus. Trying to understand this. But the problem is that we're bringing the tipa down to malchus, right? And it's just exposed the malchin in Zeranpin, which are where they're at exactly. I'm not sure right at this moment. But we're gonna now take this. We're trying to bring this tipa to malchus. But what happened is that it's not working because we stopped it up. So so there in this place, so also we're also working, what it has to do with is also completing za to 10 spheros. So I need to read this again one more time because I really didn't follow it too well. So I beg your pardon, and if we could learn another 5 minutes or so. So he said, "V'habir lekachu." So the beer for this is this: mishum shachatam she'ikri shel horedis hatipa hazu. The real reason why we're bringing down this tipa, he b'shvil hamalchus, is for malchus, because we want to make a yichud with malchus. We want to put it together with malchus and sweeten malchus. El sha'ane ikvo as a tipa b'yiridasa, but in the process we stopped up. The tipa is not going down. Kan b'makom hazeh. So he said, what so I don't know what this phrase means. Kan b'makom hazeh. I guess he means in his story. So in this place, in the story, so he says we go through the rest, or maybe we mean the rest of the story that he set up to this time, which is ultimately to wind up bringing the tipa comes down, and it works to lahashlim gam as their anpin la'esespheros. So I guess what he said is a little clumsy for me to understand, but he said two things. One, it's coming to feed malchus. It's wanting to come to do something with malchus, and the other is to complete zer anpin into 10 spheros. So that's what it sounds like to me. Let's go on and see if we can get to a conclusion over here. So because of this, that we see that what's happening is that their anpin is eating from what really belongs to her. Because she's coming down. Ki iki yeridasa, the main reason, or the main her going down, he bishvil atzma, is for herself. V'hi mashlimaso la'eser spheros, and she completes him once again to 10 spheros. Ayidei chelka hanogeya law, because of the portion that really belongs to her. Lefi zeh yotze dekan. So according to this, Lefize Yotzer, it comes out, the Kan, Shelo Komo Shar Makomos, Hazat Tafel Lenukva Shehi Hamalchus, Shehi Leah, Vihi Gedoyle Yosef B'Menu, Vihi Shemeira B'Fanecho Yosef B'Menu. And she's shining onto, and Shehi Zos Shemeira B'Fanecho, and it's shining on her face, Yosef B'Menu, more than his. Now, I'll read the next one because there's one more, but I don't think I really understood that sequence. So I would like to read it again, but I want to read the end. Maybe I'll get a hint as to what we're doing here. So he says, "V'lakach shin zachatara l'shonda b'kosva." So therefore, the Torah changes its language, and he writes like this: "Al panav," above his face, "v'lo b'fanav." L'ramos sh'hamalchus Leah he ma'alav, she's up above him. V'hi me'ula me'ira Yosef me'chaza, and because of that fact, she is higher, and therefore she shines more than he does. Now, there's something missing in this story for me.
You too?
Well, let's, if you don't mind, I'd like to read it one more time and then see if we can't find what's missing. I believe the connection is that when did Leah come into this picture? So before, the picture was all about Rachel, growing her up for this yichud, and then we had the rest of the story was that the place to which she is no longer has a rishimo of her, and that same tipa, the very same tipa that is meant for Zeir Anpin, are meant for Malchus, unites with that and produces a 10th sphera for Zeir Anpin. Remember that story?
He's actually building Zeir Anpin. There's a Yerida L'Shem Aliyah. I think that's what's happening. She's necessarily, she has to come down to bring Zeir Anpin up to her level. I think that's what he's saying.
Well, I don't hear that exactly. I don't know where you're saying this from. So let's try to see if we can't combine our thoughts.
Her light is greater than his.
Well, he says that because she's in a higher level than it, because she's related to that's. Well, I have a question though before that. You see, the question is that when did she come into the picture? That's my question. You have the light of the tipa is coming downwards and it's heading for Malchus. And Rachel, as I understand it, is in a yichud with Zeir Anpin. So, she's very close to it or whatever it is. Now, meanwhile, Leah is there. And she's also part of Malchus. So I'm thinking that as the tipa is coming down, it's reaching her first. And then after that, it goes down to completely, and it somehow develops out of that also the 10th sphera of Zeir Anpin. So, in other words, you have a double language of Malchus. Malchus is Rachel and Leah. So you have to juggle, he says that we're now talking about a yichud that's going to take place in this place called Leah. And I want to reiterate that all of the lima that we're doing all the time is about Rachel and Rachel. That's the Malchus that we talk about. She's a Karis Abayit. She's the Malchus.
Right.
But now, and so we're constantly talking about the relationship between her and Zeir Anpin or Yaakov. It's all different kinds of ways of looking at it, but that's what we talk about. Now we're talking about something else. And when is this taking place? And when is this taking place in terms of our davening? Where? So it's at Yavor. So we're at Yavor. So you already had the Nesira. Rachel is already in a yichud at Sim Shalom with Zeir Anpin. Now you're coming and the tipa. Now we're re-examining this tipa. So that's where I see it is. And I'd like to, we'll finish up and we'll read this one more time from Ulafi. See that? Or maybe we want to read the black print and the light print. So the black, that's on Tzadi Aleph. Nimsa shuhu oichol mishalah. So the question is what does it mean that he's eating what belongs to her? Umechelka hanogea law, and also he's eating from her portion belongs to her. V'hinei hu tafel alecha bebechina zu. And the fact that apparently she comes first now. He says, so therefore he's secondary to her. V'hi gedola b'meno, and she's bigger than him, or greater than him. U'me'ira b'fanecha yosef b'meno, and it shines on her face more than on his. So she's a greater light, because Leah is an aspect of Bina, Zer Anpin is Zer Anpin. Well, let's see. And what did this have to do with the completion of Zer Anpin into 10 spheros? That's another question I have. What does this have to do with that? So he said, well, the Fizeh Yotze, Shuhu Ochel Mishalah, so therefore it comes out that he's eating from what belongs to her. How is he eating from what's for the Ayidei Yeridasa? Because she goes down, Ayidei Yeridasa. In other words, she ki Iker Yeridasa, he bishvil atzma. Now, first of all, I don't really understand that phrase. She goes down, towards him, and the whole thing is for herself. Mimashlimasel as a spheros. And what is she doing? She's the one, Leah is the one that becomes his 10th sphera. See if you agree with me that translation. She's going for herself because she wants to be the Karasabaya. She wants to be the object of the Yichud with Zer Anpin. Ayidei Chelka Hanogea law. Then this comes from her portion, that portion which belongs to her, which goes to her. The Fizeh, so therefore, Yotze Dekan, Shalo Kamo B'Shar Makomo, so they'll just skip the brackets. I don't think it comes out from here. Hazah Nafo Atafo Lenukfa. She Hamalchus, because the Malchus is coming from up above him, and so therefore he's secondary to her. Shehi Leah, which makes her Leah, which is Leah. V'hi Gedoyla Yosef B'Meno, and she's greater than he is. V'hi Zos Sheme'ira B'Fanecho Yosef B'Meno. So V'hi Zos Sheme'ira, that it shines on her face more than his. Now that seems like a strange phrase. I mean, if I wanted to say that her face is shining more than his, I would have said it differently. He said V'hi Zos, and she is this. Zos means Malchus. Sheme'ira b'fanecha, that is shining. What's shining on her face? Yosef b'menu. But it just Me'ir b'fanecha, whatever it is, the light of the tipa, the light of what? Is shining on her more than on him. And then he finishes up the lakach, so therefore, shin sachatayr l'shoyne v'kosva, so therefore you should understand this. And I just want to insert, it says she's coming down for herself. She's not coming down for, why is she coming down? She's coming down for herself, and what does it say she's coming down to do? She's going to make his 10th sphera. So therefore, that the shefa, that what does she get out of becoming his 10th sphera? There's a yichud that's going to take place between them. So then what do you get out of that yichud? That's a good question. So I don't know. V'kosva al panav, so but it says on his face. V'lo b'fanav, not on his face, that way. The Remosh al Malchus, which is Leah, he ma'amel lov, she's up above him. V'hi ma'ulo me'ira, she's of a higher quality, a higher light. U'me'ira yosem mechazah, and she shines more than Zer Anpin. Okay, I think that's quite a bit. If we can digest that, that's quite a bit. Listen, thanks so much. I
appreciate it. Okay.
Okay, be well.
So you want to start 10 after 8 tomorrow? Or you're not free tomorrow? Is that what you said?
I don't know yet.
You'll know tonight?
I better let you know.
There's a press tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah, tomorrow's Tuesday. Well, yeah. I hope we can learn to them tomorrow, but I don't know.
Okay.
So let you know. Call to. Okay.